Hello, this is William Robinson, Associate Editor at viralhair.com, and today we're speaking to
Ray Hurd, voiceover extraordinaire, voice actor, voice talent, all of that. On-camera actor, all of those sorts of things.
so doing everything acting wise. Then it sounds like
Yeah, covering a pretty. I cast a wide net. Try to catch as many fish as you can.
right now. You mentioned voice acting. What are some projects that somebody may have heard you do voiceover work on?
Oh man. Okay, so that's always it's funny because that's one. It's become a loaded question. It was never. I remember when it wasn't, but then it's like, oh yeah, well these four things,
Well, maybe just
now.
a couple that people be familiar with
Well,
right off the top of your head.
right. Well, the big ones would be I'm Admiral Kizaru of One Piece. I am the voice of Selkie, the literal Navy SEAL, and My Hero Academia. I'm also a Gazif Stronov, an Overlord. And this is just from the anime world. Right
Right.
now, I'm really excited because I finally got my first. I did a couple of narrations. I'm the narrator on the Great Jahi, and there's a Demon Lord anime that I'm the narrator on as well. It's more of a first 48 style narration, like previously on the first 48. It's kind of like that voice. But in the Great Jahi, I'm more of a if you remember the Dukes of Hazzard, it's a lot
Oh
like
yeah.
that. It's like, well, Will the Duke boys have gotten some trouble again, and the first thing we're trying to do is figure out exactly where the General Lee will be taking us this tip. So it's like that. So I'm talking like that for the Great Jahi. So yeah, I do those. But the lead role that I finally landed after being with Crunchyroll for a long time is I am Leonhardt from the Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. So I am the King of Beasts, Leonhardt. So that is my new role. We've just finished 6 episodes, I believe. So yeah, I just did episode 7, I think, today, and episode 6 should drop. If it hasn't already, it'll drop this coming Wednesday on the Crunchyroll.
Okay. Now with
So
all these roles,
those. I'm sorry, and the last one is Top from Dragon Ball Super. So that's the last one. That's
okay,
the last major one I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, Top from Dragon Ball Super.
cool. Now all the roles you just mentioned,
Mhm.
um, with all the new studios coming out between the established studios that Crunchyroll works with and Funimation, and now there is more and more folks getting into doing animation from home or doing the stuff, the voiceover work. How has the competition or the need to stand out more changed over the years, you think?
Well, it's not from. Well, we did do it from home during the pandemic, but now
Right.
that that's over, everybody's back in studio. So that's not happening anymore. So the quality of the work has gotten better again. That was a challenge for even seasoned voice actors like myself. So doing it from home, but generally the same. It's just more or less the quality, of all of it was affected as a
Right.
result of the audio going through so many different channels and things of that nature. But to answer your question more directly, the since it's a lot that has changed since Crunchyroll absorbed Funimation. So uh, in some ways, there have been other new. We've had a lot of new voice talent, come in, but in other ways, it's like a lot of us that have been doing it for a long time. It's more or less we've gotten a lot more opportunities, believe it or not. So
Okay.
I've
Cool.
been able to do. I'm sorry, I had a call come through. I'm sorry. It
It's
it
okay.
probably it might hit one more time, so forgive me
No problem.
if that happens. Uh, the the in the event that well, since that's changed, I say get
Right.
back
Right.
to your question. That's yeah, I've actually gotten more opportunities. So
Cool.
Yeah, it's been since, like I said, I was a big Funimation guy beforehand. I mean, I was one of the sad ones that Funimation was dying off. So while the name has changed, the core of it is the same. So many of the same directors are there, actors and actresses. But yeah, the opportunities have been, I mean, through the roof for me,
Right.
me in particular. So I did my, like I explained to you a little before we got on air, my first two narration gigs I got through there, since it's been Crunchyroll. So I mean, and they were both at the same time. Um, I've worked with other directors. I've had newer directors, and I've had other opportunities to. They've given me a chance to uh, spread my wings, so to speak, and actually do other character voices. Because
Right.
originally, for the longest, all I would do was my natural speaking voice, and when you have a voice like mine in anime, you play a lot of bad guys. Because most of the good guys sound like they're 15, which generally they are, and or younger, and the bad guys, all sound like me. So it made it really, really, uh, really, really. It made things really cool for me to be able to branch out and stop just using
Right.
my natural speaking voice. And Silky, believe it or not, was my first character voice that I was able to do. I got to do it more like this, so. And so it was like, just being able to do that character was really cool. And then now I've done such a, they get to see now that I'm not just like a one toolbox.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've got a lot of tools in the chest, and there's a lot that can be brought to it. So yeah, I guess that's the long way of saying I've gotten a lot more work. Believe it or not, it's not the competition. The competition in the anime world has been has hasn't been bad for me at all.
Okay.
I've been doing way more, but in other places in voiceover, it has it the effect is, it's evident that way more people are doing it, but it hasn't really affected me in the
Okay.
negative, except for maybe it just makes it easier for production companies to say, well, you may cost a little more, and I'll go with this guy. But then the question would be, well, what kind of quality do you want in terms of your work?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so, I've been doing this now for nearly 2 decades. So it's like, it's more or less, what do you, uh, uh, what kind of work would you like to have? Would you like to work with somebody that's only been in it 5 years, or somebody that's been in it, 20 years? And the depth of what that brings to the table is just a different skill set altogether, so to speak. So yeah, it's been interesting, but not bad. There's a lot of room in voiceover, believe it or not. There's a lot of room for people to get into it and do it. I mean, heck, if you hadn't noticed, since the pandemic, I mean, it's celebrities, big time A-list celebrities have
Right. A lot
gone
of
into
voiceover work.
podcasting, doing a lot of voiceover work for apps and things. That did affect me, because there's nothing like having Matthew McConaughey. Ray Hurd's from Texas, but you have Matthew McConaughey, who's from Texas, doing the same thing. That name just, it just supersedes. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, with anything, when you have that kind of name attached to it, and people love his voice. He's the official voice of Reliant. So, nothing against him. It's just more or less, I mean, when you're picking the two, business will
Right.
generally
Right.
go with that name. So yeah, those things have that affected me to a degree. But and on the other end, because of the pandemic, my business it really, I really did well during that time,
Right.
because people needed more voice work to compensate for what they couldn't do on camera.
Right. And speaking of voice, and it's funny you bring up Matthew McConaughey. I read part of your background that you're from Fort Worth, and I'm from East
Yes,
Texas. And
Funky
so,
Town.
yep. So,
Oh,
um,
you from East Texas? Huh? Okay, cool,
well,
cool. I got
Southeast Texas. I'm from Beaumont, Orange, that area, that stomping
you.
ground. So
Okay,
I'm in East,
okay,
I'm in
okay.
the Eastern area now.
Right.
But
Okay,
but
okay.
but the question is, hey, have you ever felt the Texas coming out where you're doing voice work, or has that been something you've been able to manage pretty easy?
The short of it is that, yeah, managing that is really easy. Um, The taxes, is that what you said? You said like
The
taxes come out?
Texan, your
Oh,
accent, yeah.
oh, no, yeah, for me, man, yeah. Because I was trying to figure out when you said Beaumont, I was like, okay, yeah, I can hit it. Because I was like, all right, well, because that's a certain type of like that's the thing about dialects. Like I was fortunate where I was raised in a family of academics, and
Okay,
so everybody is like. Everybody has a certain they're all educated, so they have a certain way that they speak, and it all started from my grandfather, my grandmother. They were both educators, and they he was a World War II veteran, but very well spoken.
right.
And and uh and so it was, I say but very, it was just, they were, a lot of them were good speakers. That's why when the movie Red Tails came out, a lot of people didn't believe that the people were speaking the way they were. I was like, no, that generation,
Yeah,
there's a lot of very well spoken black people in that generation. And so, and soldiers, I mean, just
yeah.
awesome, intelligent soldiers. And they were, so anyway, he set a trend where we all to this day still correct each other when we speak to each other. It's like, no, that's not, it's not gray, it's gray. It's like, what I mean. So it's weird, but it's but that's how we are. So that has helped me over the course of my
Right.
career, because it's kind of like living in two worlds. Like I just said, living in. Okay, it's like that. It's like I'm living in two worlds. So most people in Texas think I come from California, because I don't really generally speak like I mean, I do speak like a Texan, but when I'm having conversations, I hear myself. So I don't, if I was just talking at home, it would be, I'm talking at home, but I don't talk like a Texan like that. I just say, I'll say like traveling to any southern state outside of Texas that's just near southern, I lived in Memphis for a while, and the first thing they said to me was, say first, say third, fourth. And I'm like, well, say man, say car, because there you're not a man, you're a man. And and you don't drive a car, you drive a car, a
Yeah.
car, like kind of almost like Boston. It helped me to be able to dip in and out. So when I went to a radio school, because I started out before podcasting was even called podcasting. I'll tell you how old I am. It was worldwide internet radio. So when I first started in this business, doing radio, I went to school for it, and the first things we learned were about losing your accent,
Right.
and dropping that. So you, like newscasters don't have an
Right.
accent. They're all what they call general. I think general American. It's
Right.
like just generic American, tone, but no accent, so you can't tell where they're from. And yeah, it helps a lot, because I pay attention to accents. I hear those things, and I dip in and out of them as I need to. And learning them helps a lot. And I knew I was doing good when I was able to test some of this stuff. And I do a Russian accent. I'll do that. And I tested it with a client that was from Russia, and she said that's really good. And I was like, okay, I know I got that. I had a client that was from Ireland, and he, really spoke with a strong Irish accent. And so we were talking, and so I put it on him a little bit, and he was like, "Oh, I like your accent." And so I said, "Well, as long as you're saying things like you've got a question, everything's a question, then it's all good." You know what I mean? And so, yeah, and that's what it helps being able to dip in and out of that stuff. So
Right.
anyway, I'm giving
I
you
do.
long answers here,
Oh, that's okay.
but
But I understand that point of view. I served in the Navy for 4 years, and
oh, awesome, awesome,
part of my job as an operations specialist, mostly radar stuff, but also communicating with ships over radio.
right,
And the ships I was on in the 4 years, I was on two different ships, but we worked with the NATO forces, Germany, England, those folks.
okay,
So I had to practice at times the way I spoke to make sure I could be heard clearly and understood,
right,
because English was the language everybody used for communicating back and forth.
right,
So what you're saying about having to practice what you're saying and
yes.
modulate what you're saying, I understand that point of view, because a lot of us, I mean, my accent was as bad as some buddies I had from Alabama and Tennessee and whatnot.
Yeah, they got it bad, man. That's
Yeah.
terrible. They
Um,
can't hide where they're from. Yeah.
No, no, they can't. And so, you know, it was something that we were encouraged to work on, especially
Right,
my second ship was a command ship. So, you know, you better be able to talk to people clearly and plainly over the radio. So,
right,
you know, what you're saying hits home. And I think that it hits home also with a lot of people like myself who were in the service who had to practice that. So it was easier to
right,
communicate.
right.
You know, so that's a neat perspective on that. Um, now, I heard what you said about doing different types of acting, narration, live action type stuff, and I took a look
Right.
at some of the stuff you're doing. Has there ever been a project and any of the types of acting you've done where you've looked at the plot or the ideas and you kind of made you scratch your head and thought, what exactly are we doing here?
um, yes. Um, I'm trying to think of like how to even describe it. Like, I mean, there are times that we've. I mean, that's been that way with anime. It's been that
Oh
way
yeah.
with. I mean, I do a lot of audiobooks too,
Okay.
and I've run into that with audiobooks, and man, it's so crazy because most of the times the authors don't really know how it works publishing wise, and especially when they hire talent, to voice bring their script to life, and it's just it can just be taxing. I mean, man, I've been trying not to complain about some of it. It's just like use an editor. Just use an editor. You know what I mean? It's like just use an editor. That's what they're there for. I get it. It's like it's nothing worse than having a project where it's your baby, because that's what it is. If you
Right.
wrote it, if I wrote something, I'm gonna have to take it to an editor. I used to be an artist, a comic style artist, and I mean I did some watercolor paint and some painting with oil-based paints and things like that, but mostly sketching and inking and all of that kind of stuff. I wanted to work for Marvel Comics coming out of high school. It was just a big deal for me. And so we were making our own comics and everything else. I had a group of friends we did all that stuff with. And so it was just I have an artist perspective on things, and that can be good and bad.
Right.
It's good for creation, bad for business, because an artists are fickle by nature. So the consistency it takes to make business work tends to be difficult, and I can say that admittedly, knowing how rough it is. Let me plug my phone in for it, guys. But the thing I learned that I was getting to was that I don't. Whenever I needed to sell an art piece or anything like that, it was the art is mine. It's the hardest thing to do after making this art is getting rid of it. And I say that it sounds probably bad the way I said it, but more or less giving it away is what I'm trying to say. So selling it, I mean, you'll have people that want to take it, they want to buy it, but they don't. But you giving it away is really a difficult thing to do because it's part of you. It's something. It's like you. It's like something you're giving now to the world. And if you're a writer, breaking down what you need to break down in order to keep the reader engaged
Right.
is important. And then using the type of words needed in order to keep the reader understanding the plot and what's going on is important. I run into that in anime. I run into that in, I mean, I've had directors, they just look at it and shake their heads, and they're trying to piece together what this is. And so a lot of times as the talent, we'll talk it over, and it's like I'm looking at this character and I'm learned about this character, and I'm like, I can't see this character saying this.
Right.
Sometimes
Right.
we have to do it, and other times it's like you just you. Other times there are a lot of times I've had to read things and make it make sense, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's like
It does.
it'll be a line that really doesn't make sense if you just read it, but off the cuff. But if you but I'll read it in such a way where it sounds natural, and
Right.
that's because I've worked at this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Enough
Right.
to learn how to say it in a way that it's like, oh well, that actually sounds right the way you said it, but it still doesn't make sense. It's like I made it make sense. You know, I made it sound like this is what people, the way people talk, or the way it's like watching. You know, I didn't understand Hamlet that well until I watched the movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like you'll see you know, you read Shakespeare and it's like, okay, you know, in the essence, an intellectual thing. A lot of intellectuals take it anyway and read it. But when when you go through it and try to really understand all of it, sometimes it's just a difficult read. But then when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, that's what that means. That's what this person's doing. That's what, you know, because I'm a more visual person.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, take from it what you will. But yes, to answer your question, I have man, I'm trying to go in no certain terms, but man, I have run across some stuff, and it's nothing worse than a wordy, like extra words. Like I can tell you this much: I've got one book that I'm working on right now that's really cool. It's about a family that's they're actually trying to break into Nashville, and it's country singers. And they're having difficulty because they're a black family, and they're having difficulty. And Nashville's old school in that sense, and they're trying to break in. And so the daughter has been doing this now for a long time. She overseas. She's a rock star, but she's trying to bring that stardom here to the States. And of course, Nashville is the gatekeepers. They are the gatekeepers of that. And so I've been doing this book, and I'm almost done with it, and it's going to hit the shelves soon. And I'm excited for them and for the attention to it, and just their journey. I mean, it's been an awesome journey watching the ups and downs and all. His book was it's coming from the father's perspective, so I'm narrating as though I'm in. And he had it was when I first got the offer for the job. It was 10 and a half hour book. The book was now after I read it. I mean, that's just reading mentally, you know, reading the script, the page. But once you read it out loud, that takes 10 and a half hours, and it multiplies the time because it takes more time to say it, the breaths, everything involved in order to give you the drama of what's going on, right? He took that book, took it to an editor, and it got dropped. And this is since we initially started, you know, negotiating the book. He took it to an editor, and the editor dropped it from what was it, 90,000 words to 70,000 words. So that took a 10 and a half hour book and probably dropped it down to 8 hours, which is like, that's why I say just take it to an editor, because otherwise there are going to be words and things I'll say because to you it's interesting because it's yours. So yes, but if the reader, you don't want to lose the reader in the process, and they're like, oh my god, you know, really doesn't make sense. You can watch, there are cartoons, things you can watch, and there's stuff sometimes that's said and it's like, that doesn't make sense. That's because somebody left something in that just didn't add up. So hopefully I answered the question, but it's, you know, you get what I'm saying. It's just more or less there are reasons these things happen, and it's usually because somebody didn't rake it over enough with editing to make sure everything came out okay. So yeah, I've faced it in a lot of stuff,
And as someone who's done fiction writing and had to send stuff to get edited and whatnot, I understand that a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah,
you know, it's necessary because you want what you write to hit the audience the right way.
Right.
So
you want people to continue to be interested in reading. It's like, you know, I did another book, and the first half of the book was like awesome. It was great. Second half of the book, not so much until a certain point, and I almost didn't care anymore. But but it does get really good as it goes towards the end. But there are parts of it that are like, man, this whole section, it's like a whole page. It's like, this doesn't even need to be here. This page could have been summarized in 2 sentences. You know what I mean? But it's like, and so and like you wouldn't believe how often we run into it with animation and cartoons, things like that. Like, it's crazy. Now, something simple like commercial copy or industrial work, they run into that kind of stuff. But industrial work, you know, it's just pretty straightforward. You just read it. I've done work for trucking companies. I've done work for all kinds of big major brands, and a lot of them that are not so well known. That's where the bulk of the believe it or not, that's where the bulk of the money in voiceover comes from. If you're really doing voice work, like serious voice work, is you're either going to be on, there are kind of a couple of spectrums. Either you're going to be like, where my voice fits in is like the movie trailers and things like that. Once you reach that level, that's like the top tier upper echelon of voice actors. So that's the Don LaFontaines and people of that nature. The voice of
Right.
Siri, I forget her name, but they're in a class or tier of voiceover that their voices are heard worldwide. Or Doc Morgan, like he's the voice of DFW. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Doc
Mhm.
Morgan is like he is the guy. You know what I mean? And so I got to meet him so many years ago, and he's just awesome. And I mean, there's probably if you've gone to the airport, you've heard Doc Morgan's voice. If you've watched WFAA at all, you've heard his voice. I mean, he was the official voice of Six Flags, all these different things. But that's that. That's you get with a network or something like that. That's a grind too, though. So it just all depends on. But that's what I love about this business. I mean, it's so much to do. There's so
Right.
much you can do. It just takes a while. It takes some time to really come up and for it to work for you,
Right.
where you can
Now,
see the benefit.
speaking of the business, what got you into it? I mean, what got you on this path?
Uh, uh, well, believe it or not, it was something I always wanted to do as a kid. I have to credit that to the Lord. I can't I can't say it's that it is. It was a God given thing because I don't I originally I wanted to do it as a kid. I always wanted to do it, but kids, you see stuff and it's like, yeah, I want to be this, but it's not the path may not be laid out for you. So man, I took a lot of different roads doing other things, and then
Right.
I'm giving you the really short answer. I went into when I got into radio school. I was 24 years old, trying to figure out what I was going to really do with myself, and I had done ministry work for a long time up until that point, and so I got to going to. So I could already speak. I was already pretty good at speaking, but it's like, what do you do with it? And so
Right.
I started doing radio and radio work and podcasting, and then I found out that I enjoyed doing the commercials more and the characters for the
Right.
commercials more than I did doing the actual radio on air stuff. Like KABS. Ray Hurd here with KABS, talking to you live from our podcast from the Fishbowl Network. We're doing this, we're doing that, and all that kind of stuff. Is like that was cool, but that wasn't what I was enjoying. So
Right.
when I did the commercials and I get to yell and do all this crazy stuff, coming to you soon, that kind of stuff. It just was way more fun. And so it took, even after that, it took me like almost that was when I started doing voice work, but I didn't really realize that's what I was doing. I didn't really understand it. And so while I was doing that stuff, I had commercials, people offered me commercials and stuff, and I would do them and I enjoyed doing it. But I didn't even realize I was honing my craft. You know what I mean? I just, how it is, you get into something, you're just doing it, you just say, hey, man, I'm trying to make some extra money and do some stuff. So I'm doing all of that with my radio work, and it took me a long time to realize this is really the way to go. I was I'm trying to keep all of this short, but I get to the point, well, because it's a lot, but I get to the point to where I wanted to do on camera work, so I aimed for that. But at the same time, I was submitting myself to then Funimation.
Right.
I'm like, hey, I want to do some work for Funimation, all this and that, or whatever. And then they didn't respond to me. I submitted, waited 3 months, didn't hear anything. Submitted again, waited another 3 months, and then they contacted me, and I was like, dude. So I get my name on a Fairy Tale. My first character was Azuma, which was a really big bad enemy for the Fairy Tale group. Uh, and afterwards, I'm talking to a buddy of mine who was a indie director in the area, and he was like, I showed him the episode I did, and he said, Ray, and we get to the end, and he sees my name in credits, and he's like, dude, you're already credited with a major property. Like, why are you trying to do this on camera stuff? And I was like, you're right. And between him saying that and my wife saying that, it was like, yeah, I guess I need to aim more for this. And so, yeah, and there are a lot of other factors too that made that happen. But it wasn't really my plan. It was just something I
Right.
always wanted to do, and I was set down in a major way in life, and uh, with family, children.
Right.
I was set down in such a way that I had to really rethink how I'm going to do things and how I can make money from home. And I had lost my job at one point, so it was like I was trying to figure out what to do. And then I was able to go back to that old skill set that I went to school for, and you really use it instead of
Right.
just
Right.
doing commercials here and there and stuff like that. I started really, and I took a whole year to in 20 what was it 2013. Yeah, I took that whole year to study before I launched my own voiceover business. um, I studied everything I could find on the University of YouTube. I've studied everything I could find voiceover, and that blessed me, man. It really did because and I did. That whole year I was taking notes, and it takes. But that's the thing, it takes discipline. You have to be disciplined
Yeah.
enough to sit down and figure it out. You shouldn't have to wait for somebody to take you through some program or something. Sit down yourself, make a plan for yourself, and start to look at which direction God is taking you. And that's what I did. That's how I approached it, and I knew that's what it was because it wasn't my plan to sit down. I'm used to hunting the lion and the tiger, doing all those different things. But I had to sit at home and really figure this thing out. So a lot of prayer, a lot of time, thinking and really talking to God about it and try to get things organized with myself. And before I knew it, that was it. And doors just started opening, and I was able to do things. And then it became how to make this viable, how to build
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
and that took some time. But building relationships, and that's really the big thing in this business. You've got to build relationships with people. They have to know they can trust you, with their
Right.
product, and that that you know what you're doing. And it takes time finding out where to find jobs in this business. It is probably it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. But at the same time, it's been really rewarding. Like, I
Right.
mean,
Right.
with the artist in me, all I'd like to do is just do the work, just do the voice work, and that's it.
Right.
And for some people, they can, join the union, do all these different things. But I'm what I call a blue collar voice actor. So I, I believe in going out. You're your best agent. You go out and you do the best you can. You get the work. You build the relationships. You shake the hands.
Right.
And it's
Right.
and it was a grind. It was a challenge. Also because I'm an extrovert, and this is great for introverted people. But even then, it's hard. I mean, the my mentor in this business, he's an introvert, and he was like, it took him a little while to get used to it. It's very isolated,
Yeah.
very isolated. Even, I mean, I work with casts of people that I don't meet until conventions a lot of times. So it's very. I mean, go back and listen to Tom Hanks and Tim Allen's story, testimonies in Toy Story, and they'll
Yeah.
tell you because
Yeah.
they do on camera work. They're working with people all the time. So anyway, I mean, I hope I answered the question. I'm just trying not to go on and on and on. But yeah, it's a lot to it. It's a lot to it, and it takes a certain level of dedication. And I mean, it's plenty of times I was like, I'm out. I'm gonna quit. But then something else would happen,
Right.
and it would keep me going. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm like, shoot, okay, And I mean, I've got people that I know, friends that are on camera. They work on camera doing stuff for me. That are doing big projects, uh, and they said the same thing about what they do. And anything,
Worth doing is
anything
worth
worth
chasing.
having. Yeah, if it's worth having, it's worth chasing. It's worth going for, and you have to be willing to take the bumps, man. That come with it. And so I have really been blessed and fortunate to have gotten to where I am in this business. And some of it just seemed to kind of fall out of nowhere, but it's luck in the truest form, in its truest form. And luck is really, people say it like, it just happened, but it's really when preparation meets opportunity. You know what I mean? If you prepared yourself, and then when the opportunity presents itself, then the two will meet. and twine they shall be. So
Right. Now you spoke about how, we're a kid and everything. I'm just kind of curious. Was there a particular cartoon that was a favorite of yours as a kid?
oh man, a particular. I don't think I have one favorite. Looney Tunes, I guess, would be the favorite. But I mean, I
Right.
was a big Ghostbusters fan. So when the real Ghostbusters came out, for everybody that remembers that cartoon, and if you haven't, Netflix, it's on Netflix. Um, at least last time I checked, so you can watch like all of them on Netflix. But yeah, that was a big favorite of mine. So I guess
Right.
top five, if I were to give them a Mount Rushmore, would be Looney Tunes, because
Okay.
you can't the classic Looney Tunes.
No.
It's just no the humor to this day. I could watch it and just laugh out loud. Like I mean, that classic humor is just it's unrivaled by even the new stuff, Looney Tunes wise. It's so much more bland now than it used to be. It's still
Yeah.
now some of it is actually still good. I did watch some of the new stuff. I gave it a chance, and I was like, you know what, it's still pretty funny. But it's just not what it was, man. It's not the
No,
same
it's
thing.
not.
So Looney Tunes, Ghostbusters, um, man, man. I'm trying to say. I don't think I've ever been asked this question before. What was my favorite cartoon? Those are the two big ones I can think of. I mean, I'm thinking of a whole bunch of other cartoons, but as far as
Yeah.
favorite, I mean, I like, well, G.I. Joe. That's another
Yeah.
one. So that's three. Um, like I'm trying not to just mention a bunch of them that I know of, but but I'd say those are the top
Yeah.
three, because
I.
apart from that, I mean, man, the '80s man were full of great cartoons, man. I mean, in
Yeah.
the intros to this day, like, do you know they have on YouTube? Somebody put together a montage of all of the animated intros from the '80s and '90s. Okay,
I've seen it.
Gargoyles.
I've seen it.
That was another big one. So yeah, like big stuff. So I mean, if you ever wanted to live in a time where TV was great, it's the '80s, man. We had the A-Team, Mr. T, Punky Brewster. We had all
Yeah.
the cool stuff, and all of those were cartoons too, by the way, except for the A-Team. But Mr. T had his own cartoon. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't remember him.
And
Watch
there's
Rocky
studios
3 for
back
no reason.
then, like Filmation. They were competing with Hanna-Barbera, and they had original cartoons like Black
Yes,
Star and Super Stretchy Micro
yes,
Woman, and
yes.
their version of Ghostbusters, both live action
Yeah.
and animated.
Oh yeah.
So
And the crazy part about it is there's some bit of history for you on that. Their version of Ghostbusters was actually the original Ghostbusters.
it was with the gorilla and everything. Yeah,
That was the original
that was their
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
They
And
when they did the movie Ghostbusters, they had to shoot almost all of the first half of the movie. They had to do two scenes. Like for example, when Bill Murray's standing outside, and they finally purchased the firehouse,
right.
and they're putting the sign up. They put two signs up. They had to reshoot that scene twice. It's the Ghostbusters, the one we got, and then there was another one. They named it something else. I can't remember what it was. If you watch, there's a cool show on Netflix called a documentary, but like a fun documentary. It's called The Movies That Made Us, and that was one of the first season. I think the first season of it,
Okay.
and they talk about that. It's worth it if you like behind the scenes stuff. The Movies That Made Us is a great thing to watch, and uh, that was because they were fighting. They went to make the movie and everything, and it wasn't until they got like halfway through production that they found out they didn't have the naming rights.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they had to fight for the naming rights for the Ghostbusters. But yeah, yeah, you're right. That did you? I'm sorry, you just reminded me of that whole thing when you said that. But
Not a
yeah,
problem.
so that was cool. But yeah, like you said, Hanna Barbera had some great cartoons. I mean, they had such a wide variety. Matter of fact, they have their own sound effects. Like
Yeah.
they're like Lucasfilm before Lucasfilm, so to speak. You know
Right.
what I mean? They had their own sound effects and style of doing things. So yeah, man, they're man, what's his name? Space Ghost. Everybody knows Coast to Coast. and stuff like that. The
But old
goofy Space
school,
Ghost. But yeah,
wristbands blazing, flying, screaming his name, Space
yeah,
Ghost. Yeah,
Space Ghost and Burn Man.
Johnny Quest.
Johnny Quest. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, that was the good stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those cartoons, heck, they've been trying to redo Johnny Quest, and then they finally did this. What those Adventure Bros? That's so much. I like it so much like Johnny Quest, but it's
Yeah.
like it's just ridiculous, but it's kind of funny at the same time.
Right. I think that's why, so I mean, I like some anime, but
Mm.
maybe not all of it. I usually look for something that reminds me of those kind of cartoons when I was a kid,
Right,
that kind of
right,
stuff.
right,
And that's,
right.
I think, why long-lasting properties like Dragon Ball or
Oh
back in the
yeah.
90s when they did the Gatchaman revival, those have
Oh
stuck with
yeah,
fans
yeah,
is because,
yeah, yeah.
and the, the previous person I spoke to in an interview talked about how they did a remake of Star Blazers.
They did. They did.
And so I think
They've
that,
been trying to bring all that stuff back, man, and that's because of our generation. They're trying to bring that stuff back, and a lot of guys from our generation want to see it. But the only thing is, I'm like, just do something new, though. It's like
yeah,
I know I understand bringing back the good old days, but like just go ahead and make something different because the for me, if it's not being brought to live action like Transformers did, or something to that nature, or like they're doing with the comic movies now, then it's more or less like, why are you bringing out another Thundercats? It's
right,
like, make it live action. If you want to do it that way, that's cool because now we have the technology to do it. Lucasfilms couldn't make Yoda the fighting Yoda that he was until the late '90s. When the technology
right,
came out,
right,
it could match his vision. Well, do that. Make something that works.
right.
So that's
Now,
the big thing.
right now, is Kimo Kawaii? Have you been to previous conventions before this one, or is this kind of a new track for you? Or
Well, the Kimo Kawaii itself is.
right,
I've
right,
never been to that convention. But no, I have done the Kamea for the last 2 years, and
okay,
I'm still fairly new to the convention circuit. The Kamea is the only one I have done, but I have done it now for the last 2 years. I was getting started with conventions. I had two initially in 2020, but
right,
we all know what happened to
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So literally the month of March, I was going to be on an airplane, the day that they had canceled everything, and I would have just landed and had to wait a week and then turn around and fly back, and that was going to be terrible. So I
okay,
just, my wife told me to just, maybe you should stay home and go ahead and cancel that, and so I did, and it worked out
right, right,
because otherwise it would have been, yeah, that would have been really bad, really bad. So yeah. I would have been stuck down there, had no masks, no, none of the PPE stuff, trying to figure out what to do.
right.
But yeah, so Kamea has been the biggest, the only convention that I've been to so far. So I'm excited to go to Kimo Kauai, and I've got a few more I'm doing this month.
Okay. Have I know you're from like the Fort Worth, Dallas area, but have you ever been to Conroe? Is Conroe someplace you're familiar with already, or
I am familiar with the territory. I have never been. I've
okay,
passed through Conroe many times going to Houston or going down to San Antonio that way. I think San Antonio, you hit San Antonio before you get to Conroe. But yeah, so going south, uh, driving south from Texas, heading to Houston. I passed through it multiple times. But
right,
there is I'm hoping while I'm there, I may not be able to do it. I don't think I'm going to have an opportunity, but I'm hoping to hit that. There's a Dragon Ball restaurant, Dragon Ball themed restaurant in Cabo that I
oh
really
really?
want to go to. Yes. And they, like
Wow,
everything in there is Dragon Ball related. Now I'm kind of, I won't say jaded, but I'm kind of taken out of the whole, I guess, uh, idea of it because at the Kamea they had a restaurant set up like
yeah,
like what I've seen of that restaurant that had all of the same kind of stuff generally that I've seen. But I'd still like to go and get some pictures and and buy some of the Dragon Ball themed dishes they have and check it out. So I'm hoping while I'm there I'll have the opportunity, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure.
Well, that sounds like a little fun, Ray. I thank you so much for spending some time with me, and
Definitely.
I will we'll get this to you so you can have this for reason. I hope you have a really good show, and hope we get the opportunity to interview you again. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. Thank you, William, and I will cherish these moments.